Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition and Interstitial characters, a new type of character in Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. It's really never existed before. It's very bizarre. We got to talk about it. I'm going to introduce you to a new term today, interstitial character. I came up with this term because it doesn't exist within the D&D community currently. And I'm amazed nobody's talking about this, but I'm going to talk about it today. So let's talk about it. All right. So what's an interstitial character? So I just watched the Puppet Adventures by Jovenshire. This is a new anointed Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So Wizards of the Coast actually pointed this and said, watch this Dungeons and Dragons, right? So when WotC comes along and says, watch this Dungeons and Dragons thing, right? There are thousands of games. They don't anoint games, unceremoniously. They're very careful about it, right? So first of all, they're saying this is Dungeons and Dragons, right? So this is a show that does a Dungeons and Dragons campaign specifically with characters, okay? And those specifically with puppets. And I want to make it super clear. The puppets are not the characters. That's not even what we're talking about today. This is so bizarre, right? So basically, let me explain what an interstitial character is. So I just watched Puppet Adventures by Jovenshire, right? And he introduced what traditionally would be a player, okay? He introduced all his players. And most of the players said, hi, my name is Sally Smith, right? That's just an example. And she said, and then, let's take one of the players. One of the players is like, my name is Sally Smith, and my player character is Firebrand, right? And so you're like, okay, player character, player. You know what you're talking about. Well, on this puppet show, the dungeon master goes, and who are you? And the person said, I'm Lasercorn, and my character, that's real, that's his literal name that he put forward, right? And then he said, my character is Hatchet Hand. That is the literal name of his character on the show. His Dungeons and Dragons player character is named Hatchet Hand. The name he said was Lasercorn. Okay? Now, this is an interstitial character. What is the name of the player? We don't know, right? The player is presenting himself as Lasercorn, right? Now, I think that this is a Mike Stocklasa Mr. Plinkett. All right, and you're like, wait, what? Right. So if you've ever seen Red Letter Media does movie reviews. Well, Mike Stocklasa reviews movies, but he doesn't review movies as Mike Stocklasa. He reviews movies as Mr. Plinkett. What? Yeah, it's weird. You're not wrong. It's very strange. So why is Mike Stocklasa doing this review for a movie as Mr. Plinkett as a character? Well, it is very interesting. Here's why, right? Mike Stocklasa says incredibly insulting, offensive things about people, right? All in the name of comedy, right? So he has this character that he's putting between the viewer and himself. He's saying, I'm not doing this review. Mr. Plinkett, the character, is. That's, I think, what Lasercorn is doing, right? He's saying, hey, my name is, John Smith. That's not his real name. I'm just using an example, right? But I'm not going to tell people that I'm John Smith. I'm going to be Lasercorn, and I'm going to be a character playing a character. I, myself, as the player, I'm not my real self. I'm not going to give you my identity. I'm going to give you the identity of Lasercorn, right? And so Lasercorn can be essentially an interstitial character. It is a character between the player and between the player character. This comes up because of streaming, okay? However, just so you're aware, you could have this in a regular physical game. The odds of it are incredibly low, right? And that's probably a whole video in itself. But this is an interstitial character. We don't know if we're seeing the real person play, or if they're being like thespian-like and putting on a character, and that character is playing the player character, right? This is a new creation that comes purely and solely from the advent of streaming, right? And the reality is, so now we have players, we have interstitial characters, and we have player characters, right? And well, I hear you. You're like, well, what's the point of all this, Scott? Well, one, I'm just going to remind you again, the idea that anybody can be a dungeon master is such junk, right? It's outrageously challenging, and it is one of the hardest things to do in the world. It is not even remotely simple. And in my opinion, you need high intelligence and high confidence to even attempt it, right? Like, so, and this is countercultural. This goes against what, Wizards of the Coast wants people to think. They want to think anybody can DM. It's not true. It's just not true. Dungeons & Dragons is a special element so unique and special, it's hard to even understand what's happening, and it continues to grow in complexity, right? So today, all I've done is just introduce you to interstitial character. We'll talk more about it in the future, but I want you to be aware that it's happening. It's here. It's already arrived. It was unnamed before I named it. It's now named, and we can talk about it. That's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on our interstitial characters. Do you even understand what I'm saying here? This is the deep end of the pool, right? You have to understand Mike Stakalasa and Mr. Plinkett to even get what we're talking about here. So appreciate your patience. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.